30 seconds. You're listening to WPPM LP Philadelphia. Good evening, everybody. You're listening to Spirit News Radio, your home for hyperlocal news in the communities of North Philadelphia. I'm Max Pulcini, managing editor and your host, and this track is Open the Door by 16 Jackies. Shout out to Jackie Kennedy. Tonight I'm joined by Patrick Clark, Ty Gabri, Tim McCluskey, Freddie Druding, Ty Walker, and Thomas Beck. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing
Fantastic.
Well. Great.
We got a packed house. Thank you to everybody for coming in tonight. We got a action-packed show full of all sorts of stories. But we'll start up a little bit about us. You can find us in print across the River Wards, Spirit of the River Wards print newspaper. You can check us out online at www.spiritnews.org and right here on WPPM every Wednesday night from 6 to 7. And now on to the news. We're going to start out with a little bit of a downer of a story. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
But an important story no less. On Sunday, May 21st, residents of West Kensington, as well as community activists from Operation Save Our City and the Charles Foundation, gathered at the corner of Malta Street and Westmoreland Street, just off Kensington Ave, to rally the community and help find suspects involved in a shooting that left a 2-year-old badly wounded. That's crazy. Earlier reports said the child was shot twice. However, sources at the rally told us that the victim was actually hit 4 times in the arm and leg. The child was not intended to be the victim. Sources at the rally told us that the 27 shots fired at the residence were actually intended for the child's father. Before we get into some discussion, here's Ty Gabri with the full story.
This is Ty Gabri reporting for Spirit News. Tragedy struck the 3300 block of Malta Street in West Kensington over the weekend when 2 suspects opened fire on a house, wounding a 2-year-old baby. Peace activists in contact with the family told Spirit News that the baby was hit in the wrist and the leg 4 times. Despite multiple gunshot wounds, the baby is expected to recover. Police are still searching for suspects, and anyone with tips is asked to contact these detectives. On Sunday, May 21st, activists from Operation Save Our City and the Charles Foundation teamed up with the community to march for peace and encourage the community to help law enforcement track down the thugs that committed this terrible crime. The group rallied at the corner of Malta Street and Westmoreland Street before circling the block, chanting "Stand up, speak up, and save our children." The group took over the intersection of Kensington Avenue and Westmoreland Street and was greeted with supportive car horns as motorists passed by. We spoke to the Charles Foundation founder, Movita Johnson Harrell. She started the foundation after suffering a personal tragedy of her own. All right, so why don't you tell me a little bit about your organization?
Okay, so my organization is called the Charles Foundation.
Yeah.
Charles is an acronym for Creating Healthy Alternatives, Results in Less Emotional Suffering. So the Charles Foundation was created 3 months to the day that my 18-year-old son, Charles Andre Johnson, who was 18 years old, he was murdered in a case of mistaken identity. So what happened was on January 12, 2011, 2 boys were beefing over a girl. My son went down to Germantown to pick up his sister. They thought my son was the boy coming back to retaliate, and they put 4 bullets in my son.
Sorry to hear that.
So since we created the foundation, we've been working with a bunch of different other organizations. I'm the executive chair of Heeding God's Call to Eliminate Gun Violence. So we work to get the illegal guns off the streets through the Charles Foundation. We do mentoring programs. We have a summer Be the Change program where we're trying to change the mindset of these young people.
Absolutely.
So that, a lot of these young people don't think they're going to live past 20. So they're easy to pick up guns and kill each other. So we're trying to change that mindset and give them some hope and give them some skills to better deal with the problems that they, go through on a daily basis.
Right. So why do you think it's important to have events like this today?
To bring awareness to the community, to get the community involved. We need everybody involved in saving our children. I mean, this is unreal. A 2-year-old baby shot 4 times? Like, our children can't even come outside and play anymore. So we're trying to wake the community up because homicide happens so often in our communities that we've basically become numb to the issue. So we're trying to wake people up and get them into action because the more our community members we have involved, the less this is going to happen.
We also spoke to Roz Pichardo, founder of Operation Save Our City. She and her group are responsible for countless gun lot giveaways and many rallies for peace throughout Philadelphia.
So we're out here to find out what we can do to bring awareness to the gun violence in the city. And not only that, we want somebody to speak up in the shooting of Price Johnson. He's 2 years old, was shot 4 times, and nobody wants to speak up.
Right.
I say it over and over and over again about the no snitching mentality. It's got to go. You got innocent kids who are being victimized, in the streets here. They can't play, they can't be kids because the mothers have to worry about them getting shot up.
Right. Have you talked with the police about this at all or anything, or have they given you any?
The first report that we got was he had gotten shot in the back. That's not the case.
Okay.
He had gotten shot. The baby got shot in the wrist and in the leg. So 4 times.
Wow, that's incredible. And
yeah.
He's doing better, I guess.
Yeah, he's talking.
Okay, this was Friday, I think, right? Is that what you
Yes.
said? Okay, Friday night. Yeah.
Yeah.
That no witnesses or anything.
Well, what they saw was 2 black males riding a bicycle who shot up the house.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. So obviously the 2-year-old wasn't the intended target. It was probably somebody else. So right.
So I'm just hoping that having quite a few people out here, we're going to have the Justice Alliance out here. We have the Charles Foundation out here. They've lost their son to homicide. Justice Alliance, she lost her son to homicide. And Team RJ, she lost her son to homicide. So we're all here, blessed that the baby survived.
Yeah.
But we're still here for support for the mom.
Absolutely. What can the community do to help this situation out?
We just need to go door to door and see who's seen what. To try to, just let them know. They don't have to tell the cops. Just call the anonymous hotline here. And they don't have to, because the whole thing is people fear of retaliation.
Right.
They don't want to be known as the snitch. And they don't have to be. Call that number, give a tip, and that's all they have to do. They don't have to, nobody have to know who they are. So I'm hoping that today, as we canvass the neighborhood, once our team gets here, that somebody will say something, if not to the police, to us.
Right. Okay.
Because they don't like talking to the police most of the time.
It seems that way. It's unfortunate, but there's a lot of different reasons for that too. So.
You can talk to us.
Right.
We live it, we breathe it, we're here. I live 2 blocks away from here.
Sure. Yeah.
This is my home. This is my community. So.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so important to have a presence like this in the community?
To show people that we're not going to stand it. That it's not okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay. And if we find out who did it, we're going to put your face out there. Once there's a warrant for your arrest, we're going to put your face out there. We're going to make sure that they're off the street.
Right.
As sometimes it takes the community police in their own community.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do. That's what we have to do.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add? I think that's pretty much all.
No, I wish it was more organizations, more leadership, more council people, more politicians out here.
Yeah.
There should be an uproar about a 2-year-old getting shot. So nobody wants to talk.
Yeah. I mean, it's that's unfortunate.
They only talk when it's election time.
This has been Taga Bree reporting for Spirit News.
Wow, that was some powerful stuff, Ta.
Yeah, it was a very sad story to hear over the weekend, but it's not the first time something like this has happened.
Yeah, and we Roz from Operation Save Our City is a friend of the Spirit, and we've covered her in the past, both in print and right here on this radio show.
Right.
It's really impressive, incredible work that she does. Tell us a little bit about what it was like joining them on Sunday.
Yeah, it was a very powerful experience to see all those people come together. Up there, it's actually a very diverse community. There's a lot of different people, different backgrounds that all came together for this rally. And I even saw one, young man just walking down the street, looked like a normal guy, and he kind of just grabbed the sign and he was all about it. He just asked how he could help. And, one positive thing is that the baby is out of the hospital.
That was my next question.
Okay,
if there were any updates.
Right. Yeah, so the baby's out of the hospital. The dad
good.
is still in the hospital. I actually didn't realize he had been shot in the knee and shattered his knee, and the bone went up and hit an artery. So
wow.
he's still in there right now, but the baby's out despite the bullet wounds. But they're still looking for the suspects, and they're asking the community to come forward with any tips because it's it's that stop snitching mentality.
Yeah, and that's what I really want to talk about a little bit more. How Roz is really trying to break that mold.
Right.
And that's such a prevailing narrative in so many of these crimes that we see happening in North Philly, where members of the community who very likely have information are just unwilling to go to the police. And like you mentioned in your package, there's a lot of reasons for that distrust.
Yeah, and just plain fear. I mean, they have a legitimate fear of retaliation
right.
in a lot of cases because the police just aren't able to prevent these things sometimes from happening. So
right.
Why put yourself in that situation?
One of the other incredible things about this story was the photography you got. You had some very vivid, bright, colorful images of the signs, and it's powerful, sad images, but they were really well done. Nonetheless.
Thank you.
Why don't you talk about some of the things that were written on the sign? I'm thinking of the one woman, "Stop killing our babies."
Stop killing our babies. Literally that's what's going on here.
Wow.
Fortunately the baby survived, but man, 4 bullets in a 2-year-old. That's just luck that kid made it.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, that's not even the first time. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, something similar happened in Gray's Ferry. A little girl was shot while getting her hair braided on the stoop, and I don't remember if she lived or died but that was a bad thing, and this is happening too much. And it's not just kids getting shot; it's all kinds of people just shooting each other, and it's a big problem. There's a lot of factors causing it too. So.
And hopefully, it's organizations like Operation Save Our City and the Charles Foundation that that will curb this violence.
Yeah, and they're the ones that are willing to go into the community and make a presence. It's
right.
tough. It takes a little bit of organization to get people together, come out on a Sunday, and then go around a neighborhood where the community is a little on edge about this kind of stuff, and just show them that they're not afraid to say this isn't right and that this has to stop.
Power
to
in
make
numbers,
our
right?
community better. Yeah, power in numbers, and you can follow them on Facebook too. They have a lot of rallies all over the city.
Yeah. Anything else
things.
coming up with Operation Save Our City or the Charles Foundation?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know there's a lot of gun lock giveaways that they do, free gun lock giveaways, because there's a lot of accidents with firearms being handled carelessly also.
Right. I mean, that's another issue.
Yeah.
Children getting a hold of something like that. They don't know the difference between a toy and a real weapon.
Yeah.
So be sure to check out Operation Save Our City on Facebook, Charles Foundation on Facebook. You can read Ta's full story and see his awesome YouTube video on our website, www.spiritnews.org. And you can check out the story in this week's issue of the Spirit of the River Wards right there in print. Yes, we actually have a newspaper, guys. Those still exist. Anything else?
No, that's all.
Right on. Thanks a bunch, Ta.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving on to our next segment, we have a story by local journalist Courtney Harris Bond. Courtney recently interviewed a group of activists and residents who spend their Sundays distributing sandwiches, snacks, and interestingly enough, plants to those battling addiction and taking residence under the Conrail tracks in West Kensington. Here's Courtney with the scoop.
Now about how to clean up the area. Philadelphia officials want. On Sundays for weeks now, a group of activists and concerned residents have been meeting near the Conrail tracks in West Kensington to hand out coffee, water, donuts, sandwiches, and plants.
People just love the plants. Plants are a source of renewed energy. They give us hope.
That's Elizabeth Reed. She works in landscaping and lives in nearby Northern Liberties, and is just one of a large handful of people who have been going to Gurney Street on Sundays. The syringe-strewn gulch running down from Gurney Street to the Conrail tracks has been a hot spot for drug users and buyers, a place to get potent heroin and inject out of sight. Nobody knows exactly how many people live in the shacks and under the bridges along the tracks. The city and Conrail are in negotiations about how to clean up the area. Philadelphia officials want the railroad to put up a fence to keep people off the tracks. But as the talks stretch on, concerned residents have been coming out to feed those in the area and to hand out plants.
You're not going into a neighborhood and telling people what they need. Maybe they want a flower garden. Maybe they want vegetables, things that they can grow and eat themselves. But you're providing the tools and the way to do it, and the help and the inspiration, and people are getting involved, and then they take the idea on themselves, so there's ownership and more momentum behind it.
The idea that Reed is talking about is that of a pop-up garden in Kensington that would ideally hold a temporary supervised injection facility, something Reed's boyfriend, Paul Cherishore, is very dedicated to. He, along with activists Dan Martino and Paul Yaber, have formed the Philadelphia Overdose Prevention Initiative, or POPI. Part of their mission is to promote the idea of supervised injection facilities, where people could inject drugs with medical supervision and access to treatment options. Poppy presented the idea to the mayor's opioid task force, which has decided to neither oppose nor support the proposal. Cherishore thinks that handing out plants in Kensington might help promote the cause by sparking interest in the idea of a pocket park and community garden that could temporarily house a supervised injection facility, later to be removed.
This park gets created that gets left behind, and you have a garden that's left behind that everybody in the neighborhood can use, and hopefully that will also raise the property tax value in the neighborhood, because that's generally what happens when you put gardens onto a block. It generally eventually does raise the property tax value.
Last Sunday, Cherishore and Reed arrived at Gurney Street near the tracks with Federal Donuts, strong coffee, and flats of plants. Many people who streamed through for something to eat and drink also took something green. A man named Kevin grabbed some sage and Russian purple tomatoes. He didn't want to share his last name or his personal story, but he said he was excited about the plants. What will you do with these?
Plant them in the ground when I get home.
And you were talking about your brother?
My brother, yeah. He has a garden, and he's got, hey, how you doing? He's got a whole lot of different stuff in his garden, so he will definitely be glad to get these.
Another man, William Toro, said that he was born and raised right near Gurney Street, but that he lives right now in a shelter. His hands bear the scars of years of injecting heroin. But Toro has been on Suboxone, a medication that helps wean people off opioids. He hopes to find Section 8 housing soon. In the meantime, Toro said he appreciates the Sunday visits.
It's people that, could use, a cup of coffee or donut, because there's people that don't, have nothing to eat or, nothing to drink, and that little things, it means a lot, to some of us, so.
What about the plants? Do you think people like the plants?
Yeah, they're awesome, you know what I mean? Because, that's just like me right now, I'm like a seed right now, trying to get reborn again, so I think it's awesome.
This is Courtney Harris Bond.
Wow, that's another heavy story. Have you guys ever been up to those Conrail tracks and seen that?
No, I haven't actually.
It's crazy. Just the amount of needles and just people living there. And it's great to see neighborhood folks from the more affluent neighborhoods going and providing something for people who are fighting an illness, fighting a disease.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have something, Beck?
Well, yeah, I was going to say I really like the idea. A lot of times homeless people will come up to me, and I'm hesitant to give them money because I don't know what they're going to use it for. And I know that sounds very cynical, but I try to give food whenever I can. So I think it's a great organization.
Yeah. Anyone else ever been there?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, and the plant aspect, I think that was really interesting.
I really like that. That's cool. It's totally like regenerating food also.
Yeah.
Like giving life in a
and
way.
you know, exactly. You know,
Yeah, it's very positive.
the whole life cycle thing of a plant. You know, they take the bad stuff and give us the good stuff.
Right.
It's like metaphorical on so many different ways. And we're actually gonna have a second part to the story right after we're done with the weather. It's AccuReggie time.
Weather time. AccuReggie of the Spirit News here to give you the weather. Let's dive right in. Last week was very warm. We had our official first heat wave of the warm season. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of last week, we hit 90 degrees or above. You felt it. You remember it. It was hot. Now, this week is going to be different than last week. Once again, every week seems to be its own sort of weather story. We can't get any type of similarity between weeks. It's just crazy lately. Now, this week will be a little more calmer. I can tell you that much. It's not going to be very cold. It's not going to be very warm. It's just going to be kind of like typical spring, which, we'll take. Today, we started off wet and kind of cloudy in some places, especially in the morning. And it did get a little bit better in the afternoon, temperatures to the lower 70s. But tomorrow, things quickly go downhill. Rain will begin in the wee hours of Thursday morning. And it's going to be a cloudy and cool day. Rain of various intensities on and off throughout the day. Temperatures only getting to the 60s. And that is the coldest day of the week. So if we can get through Thursday, we get through the worst part of the week. Now, Friday, temperatures will moderate back up into the 70s. Showers look to hang around, especially in the morning hours. So if you, of course, going off to work or whatever, bring the umbrella, because it will sort of linger on into Friday. Saturday, the weekend. Memorial Day weekend looks great. Temperatures are going to be in the 80s on Saturday, 80s on Sunday. So most of your weekend is going to be dry. Probably about 85, 90%. But on Sunday evening, Sunday after 4, 5 p.m., showers will start to roll in. The timing here is a little tough to nail down, but after 5 p.m., showers look like they'll roll in. It'll be thunderstorms and rain, and it will be enough to kind of wash out Sunday evening activities, if you will. The warmth from the weekend will continue on into Monday. I originally thought we'd only get to around 70 on Monday. It looks like we actually could get to 80. So we'll stay in the 80s, but we will remain unsettled like we were on Sunday. There's a chance for a shower, especially in the afternoon on Monday. But it doesn't look like a washout for Memorial Day. Doesn't look like a terrible day at all. Okay, so while there's a chance for a shower, and I'll keep you updated on that because it's a smaller chance, but temperatures look like they will be in the 80s with sunshine. All right, so I will keep you updated on that one. Tuesday, we drop to the 70s, and rain begins later on in the day. But we'll worry about that when we get there. The Memorial Day weekend looks good, especially on Saturday and Sunday, with Sunday evening into Monday morning, and then maybe Monday afternoon a shower chance. So not terrible. Of course, we've seen better, but certainly not terrible, and I'll keep you updated on the Memorial Day shower chance. So be sure to follow at Spirit News on Twitter, at AccuReggie on Twitter, AccuReggie on Facebook for your Memorial Day forecast updates. All right, folks, I will talk to you soon.
And that was AccuReggie with his Memorial Day forecast. You guys got anything fun planned for Memorial Day weekend?
Yeah, I think I'm going to hit up to the mountains for a day or two, do some hiking.
The mountains? That's the opposite of what everyone else does.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm doing it.
Anyone else got anything fun planned?
Trying to make plans with a friend of mine. I want to walk from my house to my sister's house. It's about 12 miles.
You had mentioned that.
I did, yeah. So I don't know if I'm going to do that this weekend or not, but I don't know if I'll survive. I'm sure I will.
You'll probably
12
survive.
miles.
Did you look it up on Google Maps to see how long it's going to take?
Yeah, about 4 hours.
Oh, okay.
That's not even that bad.
Yeah, it's not that. If I start at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'll get there by lunchtime.
Oh, that's pretty
well,
good.
will AccuReggie's forecast interfere with your plans?
Well, no, he said it was going to be dry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be fine.
Hopefully he's ready. Anybody else got anything fun going on? No? All right. Well, we'll be moving on to our next story of the week. And this is another segment by Courtney Harris Bond. And this one's a tribute, or more accurately, an obituary to Paul Yabor, who is actually one of the gentlemen we had mentioned in the earlier segment. He was one of the main forces behind the Philadelphia Overdose Prevention Initiative. And Paul, unfortunately, overdosed on the Conrail tracks last week. So here's Courtney with more on that.
Philadelphia native and an activist in the HIV/AIDS and harm reduction communities. He was dedicated to the concept of supervised injection facilities that would provide safe spaces for drug users to inject under the watchful eye of medical personnel and provide links to treatment if desired. Of course, this idea is very controversial in general, and even in Philadelphia, where 907 people died from overdoses last year. Approximately 80% of these deaths involved opioids. It seemed particularly cruel that Yabor, who suffered from a substance use disorder and who was in and out of recovery, would die Tuesday of a drug overdose down at the Conrail tracks in Philadelphia. This open-air shooting gallery in the Kensington and Fair Hill neighborhoods is where users go to buy and inject drugs out of sight of mainstream life. Yabor would go to hand out naloxone there. He said that putting up fences along the tracks to keep people out would solve nothing.
Even if you wipe out the drug market in Kensington, which is highly doubtful, it'll move somewhere else. Even if it moves underground, it's not going away, and we need to address the problem.
Yabor volunteered for years at Prevention Point Philadelphia, one of the largest needle exchanges in the country. Yabor was a tireless advocate, happy to show a rube journalist like me around Philadelphia's Badlands. The day he was my tour guide, he narrated as we drove through Kensington with dealers slinging dope at every corner in what drug enforcement agents have said is the largest open-air heroin market along the East Coast.
The L-Stop's work is like an area where people can not only get syringes, but also information. Information like where's the best bag and who's selling works.
Then Yabor spotted a familiar face in the K&A, Kensington and Allegheny Avenues.
Mike, you got a minute?
Mike trusted Yabor so much that he jumped in and told me his story. He said he'd been doing heroin for decades, that he was a rare bird to have survived so long. He said he was worried, though, lately about all the overdoses due to heroin being laced with deadly synthetic opioids such as fentanyl.
I have to get help because I'll die. You know, I gotta make a decision before the summer. I think because I'll wind up dying. It's that bad out here.
It is that bad out there. According to the report from Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney's Opioid Task Force released Friday, the rate of drug overdose deaths in Philadelphia in 2015 far outpaced those in other large cities such as Chicago and New York. The task force estimates that there are 70,000 heroin users in Philadelphia, not counting those who have sought care in private treatment facilities. In 2014, Philadelphia heroin purity on average was the highest in the country, and the situation has only grown more dire with the increased use of synthetic opioids. Fentanyl and carfentanil are anywhere from 50 to 10,000 times more potent than morphine. Yabor said that stigma and misunderstanding was getting in the way of people's thinking about how to address the opioid crisis. When I spoke to him several months before his death, I realized that the battle was personal for him.
I've lost friends. I've been impacted by my own life, and I don't want to see other people die. You know, and I know for a fact that people die from stigma. They don't die from heroin. You know, in the right circumstances, in the right scenario, if someone uses something that causes them to overdose, they can be taken care of. They can be brought back. They can have another chance. You can't treat a dead person.
This is Courtney Harris Bond.
Thank you for that, Courtney. Thank you for that tribute to Paul. And for our last news segment, we'll be paying tribute to another man, and that's Frank Kubak of the Front Street Gym. On Sunday, March 21st, the Pennsylvania Boxing Hall of Fame inducted Frank into the class of 2017. The ceremony was held at Ramona's Catering in Juniata Park with hundreds of boxing enthusiasts in attendance. Frank is a Kensington legend, and his gym is iconic. It's been the training center and second home to so many great local fighters over more than 3 decades. Hall of Famers such as Hank Quinn, Anthony Boyle, Brian McGinley, and Monty Sherrick trained there, among so many others. And to discuss Frank's induction, we want to welcome our special guest for the evening. We have Tim McCluskey and Freddie Druding. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks again for coming on onto the show, guys.
Doing great, Matt.
It's McCluskey, by the way.
McCluskey. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. You're not on radio until you screw up somebody's name on air, I suppose, right?
Right.
So, Tim, you're pretty much on our boxing beat, and Fred, you're the vice president of the Veterans Boxing Association, and you actually trained with Frank. Let's talk about the gym first. What made the gym so iconic? What made it so important to the neighborhood and to Philadelphia?
Well, I think the gym it's iconic because it basically has the grit of the Philly boxing community, along with that togetherness of how tight we are in the Philly boxing community. It's also, and one of the things that we mentioned at Frank's induction ceremony, I think one of the things that he's probably even more proud of, not just the nationally acclaimed reputation that the Front Street Gym has developed over the years, it's how many of the fighters that, never became the next Mike Tyson or never became the next Oscar De La Hoya, but through Frank and some other trainers have really mentored a lot of young kids that were going down the wrong path in life, growing up in a tough area like Kensington. We've heard this scenario time and time again where some of the kids that entered into Frank's gym, they were heading to one or two places, and that was either to jail or to the cemetery. But with the dedication that Frank's done over 3 decades of boxing, he's changed countless lives. So a lot of these young men who started boxing, they might not became champions in the ring, but they definitely became champions in life thanks to his tutelage.
It's definitely a world-class facility. I mean, Meldrick Taylor has trained there. Eddie Alvarez trained there as a boxer before he went into MMA. And anybody out there, I really suggest that you go on YouTube and look up a video called A Day in Philadelphia with Eddie Alvarez.
Right.
It was before the Conor McGregor fight. It was actually even before the Dos Anjos fight. But Ariel Helwani, the MMA announcer, came to Philadelphia and walked around Kensington with Eddie, and he started at G in Cornwall, walked down Cornwall Street to H to Kensington Avenue, and that's right at Malta Street where that shooting happened.
Right.
Yeah.
What time of day was that when that shooting happened?
That was, I'm not sure if it was like late Friday evening,
but it was like 9 o'clock at night. It wasn't that late at all.
I don't think it was that late either.
I mean, anybody walking down the street, when Eddie was with Ariel Helwani, he could have been shot.
Wow.
Right. It just tells you how rough the neighborhood.
Crazy.
It's the spot where while they're walking, they look down and they see needles on the ground.
Yeah.
And Eddie has to explain to Ariel what it is and
why. Yeah.
And they go down the avenue. They go down Kensington Avenue. They make the left on Clearfield, and they walk up to the Front Street Gym. And they knock on the door, and there's Frank, and Frank talks about the neighborhood and talks about it. He's the nicest guy in the world. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I mean,
the Philadelphia boxing community is really, really tight, and they do not hesitate to tell you how they really feel about anything. And nobody I know has ever had a bad word to say about Frank.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting Frank a couple times. He stops by the office pretty regularly whenever there's something going on, whether it's a fight or he loves us. He loves when we show up for the Turkey Brawl, the annual Turkey Brawl. They got these neighborhood guys to put on a couple bouts.
Freddie actually fights in the Turkey Brawl every year.
There you go.
And he wins.
There you go. And we love that event every year, and it's great because it's for charity. It's a fundraising event, and you got all the neighborhood guys coming out for it. But Frank has always been a really nice guy, and in fact, Front Street Gym was featured in Creed. And I remember that when it was announced that they were going to be using Front Street Gym to shoot a couple scenes, Frank came right over to the Spirit and he was like, I got to get you guys in there. You guys are going to be the neighborhood paper, going to take photos. It's going to be awesome. We actually tried to go in there, and the movie studio guys said that because our photographers were non-union, they were not allowed to take pictures on a movie set. And Frank was so upset that they told us that, and he said, if there's anything I can do to make it up to you guys, just say the word. And he's been extremely facilitating for any event we've covered, and he promised that if there is a Creed 2, he doesn't care what the movie guys say, Spirit News is in.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear.
I have never seen a Rocky movie.
What the heck is wrong with you, man?
I wanted to let everybody know that.
Oh man.
But Front Street Gym was included in Creed, and but there's real life stories that have come out of that. Fred, what was it like training under Frank?
Well, I actually didn't train under Frank.
Okay.
I trained at his gym. The end of my amateur career and in my entire professional career, I trained under a trainer, Wesley Mozon, who was kind of partners with Frank. Frank was the gym owner, and Wesley had trained fighters there. So, but I've been around the guy for years, and just a class act and a great guy, and not just a great boxing person, just a great all-around person in life. And also, I think you mentioned about the Turkey Brawl. there's a lot of things that are written about Frank, about what the Front Street Gym has done and some of his fighters, but some of the things that don't make the press are these things that he does, these charity events that may go unnoticed, but he's there time and time again. So I think his honor this past Sunday was long overdue, well deserved and long overdue, and I was just happy to be there and be a part of it.
Yeah, so tell us about the ceremony. What was that like?
Well, one of the great fighters out of the gym is Hank Quinn. He's a Kensington guy. I believe he lives on Kip Street, actually near Cambria. Back in the 70s and 80s is when he grew up. And he told me that Frank would take him to all the amateur tournaments when he was younger, to Florida, to Kansas City, to all these different places. And Frank would pay for it himself.
Wow.
And Frank, I don't even think has a boxing background. He wasn't a professional boxer himself.
He's just a long-time fixture in the sport, and as like I said, when you're in something 37 years, you pick up a lot along the way.
Yeah, you meet a lot of people.
Yeah. But that's another great story about Frank. Once again, something that you probably don't know. I mean, a lot of the kids coming up in Kensington, they didn't have the economic resources to move on to advance to these tournaments and things. But Frank, out of his own pocket, would make sure that these kids try to live their dream. And Hank, many others that have trained under him, can tell this same story over and over and over again. And that's just what a kind of guy he is.
Yeah, the glory days of the Blue Horizon in the 80s had a lot of fighters come out of Front Street. And that's when Hank and Anthony Boyle and a lot of those guys had fought. They would fight every month at the gym, and it was at the Blue Horizon. And it was funny because back then you didn't see much advertising for it because they didn't need it. They would just put the word out to the boxers, and if you knew one of the boxers, you would go watch. And it was great.
Yeah, it's a shame the Blue Horizon isn't doing that stuff anymore. I mean, it's such a beautiful, big venue. Let's talk about the state of boxing in Philadelphia really quick. I mean, with Blue Horizon not doing that kind of stuff anymore, I know that Tim's been covering a lot of different boxing stories, whether it's at the Sugar House, the Fillmore. Ty, you've gotten in on this too. The arena down in South Philly. What's the state of Philly boxing like right now?
Well, speaking of the state of Philly boxing, you just mentioned the 2300 Arena.
Yeah.
There's a big bout there this Friday. Hank Lundy, great South Philadelphia fighter. Had the opportunity to see him train a number of times down the Marion Anderson Recreation Gym. He's a Philly fighter through and through. But ironically, he hasn't fought in Philadelphia in 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's his homecoming Friday night. I was
long overdue.
But when I say he's the ultimate Philly fighter, gives his heart. Exciting, will bring the crowd to their feet. And it reminds me of he's a Blue Horizon type of guy. I was telling the promoters of the show, it's Russell Peltz, and I was talking to Brittany Rogers of BAM Promotions that's co-promoting the show at the Pennsylvania Hall of BAM Banquet Sunday. Unfortunately, I have to apologize. I'll be out in Los Angeles the same night at Oscar De La Hoya's running a show out there.
Oh, nice.
But I'll be there in spirit, rooting Hank on. I'm glad, and I know everybody that goes down there. If anytime this guy fights, you get your money's worth.
Yeah, Hammer and Hank Lundy is. If you ask people who their favorite local boxer is, a lot of people say that he had an outstanding amateur career, and his professional career. He's one of these guys that'll fight anybody, anywhere, at any time. His biggest loss, I think, was to Terrence Crawford.
Yeah, in a world title fight.
And
wow!
And like I said, boxing had been kind of on the decline locally for a few years. I mean, Philly is really the boxing capital of the world in many regards. I mean, I just found out from John DeSanto that he said that in the 1920s it wasn't even sanctioned. Professional boxing wasn't sanctioned in New York City.
Oh wow!
So all the big fights were happening in Philadelphia. I think Jack Dempsey once had a fight here, and 120,000 people showed up for it and paid to see it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's a good tip right there.
Do you guys think? I mean, you said it's kind of had been on a decline. Do you see it as kind of on an upswing now?
Yeah, it's really on an upswing. There's a lot of young people involved in it now. People like Brittany and people like.
There's a lot of good prospects that you're going to be hearing about very soon. And one thing about Philly boxing, it will never die. It may have its ups and downs, but it's ingrained in this city.
Yeah, people love Hank. There's going to be a lot of people there to see Hank on June 2nd. On the undercard is a kid named Scott Kelleher from Northeast Philadelphia. He's a union electrician.
Okay.
And the 2300 is literally across the street from the union hall, the electricians union. So he'll get literally 500 people out to see him. So the place is going to be rocking.
That's about as Philly as it gets.
From the union hall to the boxing
I love
ring.
it.
Well, that's one of the things that made the Blue Horizon so legendary. we had neighborhood rivalries, not just boxing rivalries. You had at the same time, a guy from North Philly fighting a guy from South Philly.
Yeah.
In the arena we had just from the locals, just to give you an idea of how really famous the Blue Horizon is. I was out at the Manny Pacquiao fight in China. Got talking to some boxing people through interpreters because we couldn't even. And as soon as I told him I was from Philadelphia, the first words, and I could somewhat make it from the interpreter, was Blue Horizon, Blue Horizon. I mean, it really, it's mind-boggling. People don't really realize what a world reputation that building had.
Yeah, I went to Temple University, and I walked by that building almost every day. And, they had the historical marker out there, but there are so many people that when I tell them, like, hey, did you know that, like, the most legendary boxing arena in the world is just off Temple's campus? They look at me like I got two heads.
Yeah, Joe Fraser's gym was just north of Temple, and the Blue Horizon was just south of Temple. And when I went to Temple, nobody really knew better. It was really the neighborhood people that would come to the matches, not the students.
Right.
The Blue Horizon was so great because it was an ex-Moose Hall, I believe.
Yes.
And the way it was set up, the balcony was literally on top of the fighters. I mean, if you said something out loud, the boxers could hear you. And people, when they weren't happy with what was going on, they'd throw something at the referee, and you would hit him on the head.
That's also so Philly. I love it.
And they saw you too, and they, you say something, like you would boo or something, and then the boxer would turn and look you in the eye, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's going to be waiting for me out front when I get out there. But it was probably the greatest place to see boxing. It's a shame that it's shut down. But the Leah Corus Center has boxing now. The Fillmore is a great venue. It's only had, I think, one fight so far, but it's like the Blue Horizon, which has a great balcony like that, and it has a very nice backstage for the boxing area.
That, Live Nation music venue becoming one of the hotter boxing venues in the city now. I think that's really cool. It's great to see them diversifying and not just doing crappy indie rock bands.
Yeah, right. And speaking about the state of the local boxing scene, I think that the fact that there's so many people moving here from Puerto Rico, because boxing is still huge in Puerto Rico.
Right.
It's not, they don't watch football or basketball as much as they like baseball and boxing. And there's a lot of gyms opening up. A lot of the old timer gyms like Harrogate and Front Street Gym, they don't have websites. They don't, they're just old timers, and they're kind of sometimes lost in that arena. But when you have these young kids coming up, guys like Christian Paguero, Joseph Adorno,
Christian Quarto, keep an eye out on him. Trust me.
Brandon Pizarro is another good one. So you have young fighters, young promoters, young people getting into it. You have social media. You have everything's looking good. I think it's really on the upswing, and we're in a good position for this. I believe the sport's actually up on the upswing too. I think MMA took something away from it for a while,
and that's what I wanted to kind of talk about next. Like, how has that happened? I mean, the rise of MMA has also been simultaneous with the decline of boxing. Can the two sports live together in harmony? Is there some animosity between the MMA folks and the boxing guys?
It's the old-timer boxing guys that don't really like MMA. All the young people, a lot of them do both. So there's guys that fought. There's a guy, Tito Gonzalez, who fights out of Johan, who also does MMA. There's a lot of guys that do both. So the younger generation doesn't mind it. And guys like Eddie Alvarez going to, giving props to the boxing gyms, I think helps that a lot.
Certainly.
Another guy on the undercard is Isaiah Wise. He's a trainer at the gym at the Piazza.
Right.
So there's a lot of local people there, and that event's probably gonna sell out, and it's probably gonna be rocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I especially a lot of the MMA guys, they realize that the boxing part of their competition, if they really want to go to the next level, they have to do their boxing training at a boxing gym.
Right.
And that's why a guy like Eddie Alvarez, who became world known, where was he doing his boxing training at? Front Street Gym.
Right.
It's just a fact. So, and like I said, a lot of these guys are cross training now. Nowadays, a lot of them have the same strength trainers, so there's a lot more interaction than it was at one time.
Well, I guess it's the whole point of mixed martial arts. You learn from several different disciplines and bring that into the ring or the cage.
A lot of the MMA guys, really, their boxing is very lacking. If they were to go into a boxing match, the speed that boxers throw their fists is just so much more incredible. Something that's different about boxing than all other sports for kids is that it's not done in schools. It's not like football or basketball or anything like that.
Certainly.
You have to do it on a neighborhood basis. And these kids, they start, some of them, a lot of them, their fathers boxed and their brothers boxed, and they start at a very young age, 8, 9, 10 years old. And they're in the gym every single day from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, just doing the speed bag and the heavy bag. If you're doing jiu-jitsu and you're doing all these other things, you're just never going to get that hand speed.
Right.
That was one of the things that amazed me at covering these local boxing kickboxing places, just the kids that are in there. I've seen like 7-year-olds training, and they train hard too. The 8-year-olds fighting each other. They keep it, so they don't hurt each other too bad. But
well, I believe USA Bots now it's 8 years old.
Okay.
Is when somebody guys like Oscar De La Hoya, when they started their career, I believe they all had their first bouts at 6.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So,
do you think this is for either Tim or Freddie. Do you think that boxing and MMA will ever supplant other sports in terms of popularity, like baseball or football?
I don't think it can, because the heyday of boxing was the 20s and 30s and 40s, when it was the biggest sport in the world. It was bigger than football and basketball, and maybe not baseball, but all the other sports combined. I just think there's too much competition out there. It's still kind of a niche sport,
right.
But I think it's international. I mean, you don't need to know any rules for the most part.
Right.
When I started covering boxing, I was for the paper. I was a little bit intimidated, because there's so many people in Philadelphia that know so much more about boxing than I do. But it doesn't really take a lot to describe one person beating another person. Your mother can understand it. Your grandmother can understand it. So I'd like to thank a lot of the people that have helped me. Every time I have a question about boxing, I ask people like Freddie and Timmy Sinise at Harrogate, and they always help me out. John DeSanto. Well, I'd like to ask you, what's your reaction been to the increased coverage in boxing in the neighborhood?
I love it, and we've gotten a lot of feedback from our readers saying a lot of them are like, I wish you guys would have more listings about when the fights are happening, because people want to go.
Yeah.
People, have told me, well, we didn't know where the boxing went, and now it's still here, and now that we know that, they really appreciate this.
I followed, and I even thought there'd be one bout a month, and anymore there's one bout a week, and then they also fight in Reading and in Bristol, Pennsylvania, and in Atlantic City and in Wilmington.
Yeah, and
there's the Golden Gloves. There's the amateurs that goes on, all throughout the year, and the PAL tournament. That's a big national tournament.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing. I know I grew up in South Philly.
Okay.
Although, like I said, I fought out of Kensington in the Front Street Gym. There was so much coverage at the time on my fights that a lot of people thought I was from Kensington, because all the local papers were always covering the local guy out of Front Street. But I was actually from South Philly. But more people actually thought I was from Kensington, just because I was always in the Kensington papers, because that's how the local papers up there, I guess it was the Star at the time, and things, where they were just, every boxing fight they covered, even on amateur levels.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do now. I mean, Tim and I have kind of joked that we've become the paper of record when it comes to the boxing scene in Philadelphia. And I mean, I think that's really important. I mean, this is such an innately Philadelphian thing, and it just embodies the spirit of this city so much that I think it's important that we cover it with the same way that every other sport is covered in the city.
Well, I grew up in the far northeast, and my family's from Kensington, and when I moved, I bought a house last year in the neighborhood, and I thought there was going to be 3 or 4 gyms in the area. I knew about Front Street. I had actually trained there when I was 17 years old for about 2 months. I didn't get any farther past the double jab. Jack Costello was my trainer at the time, and I like to say, well, there's literally at least a dozen gyms. There's Chuck Diesel's within a few blocks, Harrogate, Bosie's Dungeon, Front Street Gym.
Danny Garcia's
gym. He's got a great kid, TJ Velasquez, who's from 3rd in Ontario, who just fought this past week and really looked intimidating.
Featured in your paper today?
Yes, sir.
And then there's Joe Hand down on 2nd in Northern Liberties. There's the Strength Academy in the Piazza.
Seen what's his name? Oh man, why does his name escape me? Old guy, Bernard. He trains at Joe Hand. Yeah.
He's 53 years old. He's a vegetarian. He'll still beat the snot out of you.
I've seen him at one of my favorite Italian places, and he's just scarfing down all of the food. My dad and I were at lunch one day at this place right on 4th and Wood, and we're like, is that Bernard Hopkins just chowing down, just surrounded by a bunch of people? It was really something funny to see.
A friend of mine named Jacob, Jake works at Johnny Brenda's actually, and he was a boxer when he was younger, and he tells a great story that his family had a cleaning lady or something that used to come over to the house once a week, and when he first started boxing, she had said, "Oh, my ex-husband is a boxer. He's a professional too. He's very good. You might want to talk to him. He can give you some pointers." And Jake said, "Oh, that's great. That's fine." I had no idea who she was talking about. And she got on the phone. She said, "Bernard, remember that young man I told you about? He really wants to talk to you about boxing." So she hung up the phone, and he said, "Yeah, he said he'll come over someday." And he's like, wasn't even sure he was talking about Bernard Hopkins yet, but sure enough, an hour later, Bernard Hopkins is at the front door. Say, hey, where's Jake? I want to talk to him about boxing. And he said they just sat on the couch for he's got all these pictures of him as like a 14-year-old kid with Bernard Hopkins with a big smile on his face.
That's incredible. Pat, really quick, while we're on the Bernard Hopkins talk, you had a really fun experience with him.
Yeah, he's got a real sense of humor. I covered a story. He did a training session at Joe Hand back in December, I believe, and he made an entrance. I was there with all the media lined up, and he came in the back door. Everyone kind of got the idea that he was about to come in. Door opens, a couple of his trainers walk in, and then this guy, this old man walks in, and after a couple 10 seconds, he kind of paused in the doorway, and then so there's something about his beard that looked off, and I actually realized, I was like, that is not an actual old man. And I started taking photos, and then everyone realized that was Bernard Hopkins, and all of a sudden all the flashes started going off, and
it was like a Kyrie Irving, Uncle Drew moment.
It was an Uncle Drew moment, and I actually wrote that into my lead. That was my lead, was he's not shy about his age. He's just cracking jokes about how old he is. He's a really funny dude.
Also at the Boxing Hall of Fame, it's great to see a lot of the old timers they put their life into it, and they're not going to be here forever. And to hear some of the old stories, George Hill told a great story about when he met Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was waiting for him at the gym, saying, "You're the heavyweight around here. I'm going to train with you." So he sparred with him for a couple days.
Wow!
And he said he'd made $100 at the fight at the Spectrum the week before, but Muhammad Ali was paying him $200 a round to spar with him.
Wow!
And that doesn't happen. I also want to give a shout out to Wade Hinnant, who's a trainer at Joe Hand, who also got in the Hall of Fame this week too.
Yeah, let's get back to that ceremony because we're running out of time. Let's talk about Frank getting inducted. What did he have to say when he accepted his plaque?
Well, if you know Frank, he's an emotional guy, and it was an emotional night for him. So he basically thanked everybody. Of course, he tried not to give credit to himself, take credit for himself. He said it was all about his kids, but the kids that he trained over years. But as it was alluded to in the paper today, we all know this was long overdue, and this was his night to shine, and we're all glad he finally got it. We also, one of the things at the Hall of Fame ceremony this week, not only did we honor some president, retired boxers, we also mentioned a couple of deceased boxers, and that's part of the basically the premise behind the Pennsylvania Boxing Hall of Fame too, and the Veteran Boxers Association. You may be gone literally, but you're not forgotten.
Right.
We've honored a couple of deceased fighters. Richie Benton, a great middleweight who actually beat the great legendary Benny Briscoe. He had been passed for a number of years now, but his family came out. They enjoyed it. They were, super happy that he finally got his day in the sun, even though he wasn't here to say it. So it was a very emotional night, a great night, and I think everybody enjoyed it.
Jerry Judge is a bartender. I'm sorry, Jerry Judge is the brother of one of the bartenders at the VBA.
True, at the VBA.
He's a guy from Tacony, I believe. He went to Father Judge High School, and he was to see him, he's just a regular guy from Northeast Philly, but he was a heavyweight, and he boxed. Who were some of the guys that he fought?
He had some good wins, and he was, of course, most famous for sparring with George Foreman.
Right.
Wow, so many legendary names that we've just mentioned, in such a short amount of time. It's really incredible. The legacy and the history and just the legends out of Philadelphia.
Smoking Burt Cooper, don't forget him. He was there.
That's right. Who was reminisced about this night? Was one punch away from becoming a heavyweight champion of the world. Almost had the great Evander Holyfield out on his feet. One punch away, and he would have been it, but still shared the ring with him, and almost had the champ out for a little bit.
Wow.
So, real quick, I just mentioned when Tim had mentioned about Johnny Brendas, just to change the topic, but I thought it might be interesting to some of your viewers, especially a lot of the newer, with the gentrification that's going on in the Fishtown area. I think a lot of people have, when they walk by Johnny Brendas, they think it's just like a cool sounding name.
Just a cool name. No.
But they don't realize it was actually a professional boxer.
Yeah.
And Creed was filmed there, too.
Absolutely.
That's true. His real name was Johnny Imbrenda. So the cool sounding name has somewhat of relevance. In those days, there wasn't the money had you did anything,
right?
To be more marketable. So his management team decided that you were going to go as Johnny Brenda because that just sounded a lot better. But he was a local guy and had a nice professional career.
That's so funny. I mean,
that bar was a dock workers bar. That was
not a hipster bar.
Not a hipster bar. Women would never be seen in that place. And most men would be
it was definitely a beer and a shop bar at one time.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that the new owners have have kept the name, so they kept the history of the original Fishtown neighborhood. It's kind of a good blend of the new with keeping the name.
Right.
They also have upstairs on the second floor Johnny Brendan's original pro boxing gloves.
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, you can see that.
I didn't know
I
that.
never realized that. I've seen so many concerts up there too. I've never realized
Yeah,
that.
you'll see the little case. Next time you're up there, look for
I
it.
certainly will. Yeah.
So kind of like a tribute to the original neighbors of Fishtown, which I thought was very nice.
Awesome.
And we would be remiss to say if this past week or in the past month that the pet shop from Rocky was destroyed.
Yeah,
That's
yes,
true.
I saw that headline.
I had driven by it just a week before and told somebody, that's Mighty Mix Gym was on the one corner and right across the street was the pet shop, and somebody was giving a Rocky tour, and
Yeah.
just as the wrecking ball was coming in to destroy it, so
Oh, my goodness.
another little piece of boxing history has passed.
Really quick, at the end of the article, Tim, you note that the permanent Pennsylvania Boxing Hall of Fame will eventually be located at the Veterans Boxing Association. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Freddie's the vice president, so
Right.
I'll defer to him.
Yeah, it's a very exciting project that's been underway. It should be materializing. We don't have it as that day yet because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of fundraising things that we have to do
Right.
to accomplish it. But basically what it's going to be, if you've ever been in the Veteran Boxers Association on Clearfield Street, basically a lot of people come in and they're like, what is this? Is this like a museum? Is it a clubhouse? Is it a bar? What is this? And the answer is it's kind of all the above. The best way I can it's kind of like a VFW hall, but for retired boxers.
Right.
That's on the entire first floor. That will still may be the same. Our long-term project, now that it's getting a lot closer to fruition, will be the second floor will be the actual Pennsylvania Boxing Hall of Fame. So that will be just every fighter, just like this Frank and some of the other people we've been talking about. The only dedications that'll be up there is those fighters are actually enshrined into the Pennsylvania Boxing Hall of Fame. So it'll be more of like a little museum-ish kind of feature, and then we'll still have the clubhouse and everything on the first floor.
Right in Port Richmond, right off Aramingo Avenue.
Yeah, keep us posted when everything happens. We'd love to cover that.
We absolutely will.
Fantastic. Well, we're gonna finish off the show with Pat's picks, but really quick, I wanted to thank Tim and Fred. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for telling all these great stories, for educating all our readers about just how impressive Philadelphia's boxing history is. Thanks a lot, guys.
Boots Ennis, he's another guy, an up-and-comer that is going to be great. It's Bosey's son, and he's
There you
the
go.
best of the Ennis family, probably. He's a great up-and-coming boxer.
Well, be sure to check out Spirit News print, spiritnews.org online for all the latest and greatest in boxing coverage. We're the only ones who do it. So keep it up, guys. And I'll Pat, we're running out of time, so why don't you just hit this weekend's shows and we'll go from there.
Yeah, real quick. Not a whole lot of shows going on this week, but I was really interested in the Future Island show at Fillmore on Monday. That's going to be interesting. Then there's Everybody Hits tomorrow. Going to be Told Slant, Hello Shark, and Anna McClellan. Some real sad tunes to take you out from this week. And as always, you can check out our Spotify playlist. And that's it.
Right on. Once again, want to thank all of our guests for this evening's show. This is Spirit News Radio right here on WPPM. We're live every Wednesday night from 6 to 7. Check us out in print, Spirit of the River Wards newspaper in North Philly, and www.spiritnews.org. We got everything online. Check us out on social media. And don't forget, folks, be the mouse that roared.